Hi, everybody. My name is Mehmet Dede, and I'm going to be your host today on this beautiful day, uh, zooming in from New York City to talk to you about what an electronic press kit is and how you can use it in order to get gigs for yourself as well as for your band and people you're working with if you're managing, and how to move from the electronic press kit phase onto a pitch email. So those are the two subjects we'll be covering today. As you may imagine, there's a lot of information going into what constitutes an electronic press kit. So we'll look into those. We'll look at how to define an electronic press kit, why it's really relevant in today's marketplace, and then we'll see how everything that you've pulled together factors in to a pitch email to music venues and promoters on the live scene. So today's conversation will really revolve around live music, booking, marketing yourself, and sort of like understanding what's important for the talent buyer and the promoter side of things. So I have a presentation here that I'd like to share with you today. If you look at the description sections underneath, then there should be a link to download the PDF as well. But without further ado, why don't we get started here? I'm going to share my screen and we can start talking about how to put together an EPK. All right. So first, a little bit about myself, just so you can see where I'm coming from. I am in charge of all the artistic programming and the booking at music venue Drom, which is a club located in downtown Manhattan in New York City. We started this club in 2007, so this is our 18th year, presenting music from all around the world, local acts, national acts, as well as those that are under the radar. We consider ourselves to be a showcase venue where we introduce new acts to the New York marketplace as well as the United States marketplace, especially for those that are coming outside the country. Our tagline at the venue is "Your Journey Through a World of Music." And we are very serious about this. We do present a lot of different sounds from around the world. For instance, on this picture, you can see a band from West Africa on the top left-hand side. On the top right-hand side, you see an a cappella band from Montreal, a whirling Sufi dervish on the lower left-hand side, a dancer as well as her ensemble from the desert of Rajasthan in India. And on the right-hand side, you see a little picture of the music venue. Drom means path from the Greek word pathos, from the dramas, and the idea was that we are reflecting on our journeys and our experiences from around the world and presenting world cultures, sounds, and styles, and dance as well at our music venue. We host about 300 people in a seated standing room capacity as well as a seated cabaret style capacity. We present over 400 shows a year in many different forms, including jazz, singer-songwriter, different global sounds, electronic music, hip-hop, rhythm and blues and soul, as well as interdisciplinary arts, dance, as well as stand-up comedy and theater. So it's a really busy venue. We are really lucky to be working with a host of talent from around the world for these presentations. And throughout the years, what I've observed as somebody who's in charge of all the bookings at the venue is that a lot of performers and artists, while greatly talented, lack some of the understanding of what someone like me, a talent buyer, somebody who's engaging these performers, look for. So there are certain things that I want to highlight in the pitch email today that is really relevant for artists when they approach music venues. And in order to put together an effective, impactful pitch email, you also need to have a better understanding of who you are as an artist. And that sort of like constitutes the electronic press kit. Before we actually get there, I'd like to share this slide with you from a company called Chartmetric that polls data on artists. It's a great resource for a lot of artists in order to get an understanding of their standing in the digital world. According to Chartmetric, there are really 6 stages into an artist's career. And if you can have an understanding of the excuse me, of the trajectory of an artist from very early on until later, then we are in a better position to really situate ourselves from the artist side of things. There's this 6 boxes, as I said, but really I'd like to group them into 3 groups. The first 2 boxes would be the first phase. The third box, mid-level, would be the second phase, and then the rest would be the sort of like third group, the upper levels. That's sort of like the level of all the performers that we have probably heard of on radio, on TV, touring theaters and arenas around the country and around the world. So that's sort of like, another league altogether. The goal for any artist, from the economically speaking, is really to get to the mid-level. So if you're starting at box number 1, but if you get to box number 3, that's already a huge step. And some artists actually make a very comfortable living in that third box, and that's where they stay. They don't go past that, economically speaking, or even like visibility wise. It's a very difficult marketplace to be able to stand out and to be able to really move upward. So the more you move up, obviously it gets more difficult. So if we can get to box number 3, if we can become a mid-level artist, that means at that point, from the economic perspective, we are able to make a living through our artistic endeavors. This might be performing, this might be recording an album and streams, this might be writing a song and then licensing it to Netflix or any other streaming platform. This might be teaching music to other people. So there are many different ways of making money in the music industry. Performing is only one of them. Also, it happens to be the most important one right now for independent artists, because until they get to a point where they can make meaningful income from streaming platforms, until they have songs that are on streaming platforms that are licensed on ads and whatnot, live performance will be sort of like the way to generate income. But we also know that live music is very expensive, and especially in today's marketplace, as things are increasing in expenses, we have to make sure that we make strategic decisions as to how we go into a tour and how we go into live performance, how we build an ensemble, for instance, to be playing live with, and how we spend our time really contacting people who are promoters, people at music venues, people who are talent buyers or at music festivals, in order to pitch ourselves as live performers so they can engage us. And I'd also like to make a difference here between the first 2 boxes. So this is the early phase, right? The undiscovered and the developing. The difference between the two is that when you're completely undiscovered, meaning that you don't really have a management team, you don't really have a booking agent, you don't have people who know you really in the industry, you're kind of on your own. And that's how a lot of people are starting. Maybe first you're a hobbyist and you're doing this for fun, then you'd like to take it a notch up and become a professional or semi-professional, again, from the perspective of economics here, not necessarily, judging anybody's talent here. But certainly, you don't really have a team just yet. When you're in the developing phase, that's when things start to move. And that's when you might actually have more team members working with you. I'm not saying that you'll be signed to a major record label deal immediately, or you'll be at like world famous stages, but you might have a social media manager that you've engaged, that you're working with. You might have to pay out of pocket for this at the beginning, but certainly you have enough content for this person to do their job. You might have a manager who's interested in exploring to working with you, or has signed on to work with you, and that person might be bringing gigs. That person might be bringing in deals, one-off deals with production companies or record labels. That person might be able to get you on an opening slot when somebody famous is performing, so that you can benefit from the visibility of the artist that you're opening for. So the developing phase brings sort of like more team members. The other thing that the developing phase brings is actually numbers. So when you undiscover it, you're starting from scratch, right? We've all been there. Whether you're an industry professional, whether you're an artist, you start with 0 connections on LinkedIn, on social media, TikTok, Instagram. But then over time, you increase those numbers. Those are your relationships, right? Whether those relationships are with the industry or whether those relationships are with your fans. And as those numbers increase, you start developing, again, that word developing, a fan base. So the difference between those first two boxes is that with the developing phase, you can actually have numbers that you can show for. And those numbers are really critical from the perspective of a booking person. So if you want to have a live music career, you need to be able to show some numbers. Aside from the fact that you have a great repertoire, that you're a great stage performer, and that you have a potential to move tickets. So today's class will really be understanding what goes into the electronic press kit, which then you can use in order to give it to a social media manager for them to understand who you are, to be able to give it to a manager so they can really understand where you're coming from and really how you see yourself. An electronic press kit really just brings together a lot of information from your background and presents it in a professional way to somebody who might be working with you. Again, you can use information from the press kit to give it to a venue so they can really have a better understanding as to how many people you might be bringing to the table. Even though electronic press kits have the name press in them, it doesn't mean that you have to have tons of press around you, from the Wall Street Journal to the Guardian. The electronic press kit is really sort of like a state of the union, if you will, of who you are and presenting yourself to other people. And the fact that it's electronic means that you can update it regularly and you can present to people it's something new that's happening in your career. So this is something that's a living document. Once you send it out, it doesn't mean that you'll have to hang on to it for many years to come. In fact, you should revise it from time to time and really make use of it. So with that, perhaps we can get started into what goes into it. And I should also preface this slide and this presentation by saying that electronic press kits have different names. Some people call these online portfolios, which might give you a better idea as to what we're doing here. Some people call them media kits. In the US, we use the term one sheet, which tends to be a one-page document that outlines everything. So there's many different names, and sometimes these one sheets are actually 2 pages, so actually like a 2-pager, if you will. Again, a lot of technical terms, but it's more or less all the same thing. I'd like to think of electronic press kits, and from now on, I'm just actually going to abbreviate this to say EPKs. I'd like to think of EPKs as a business card. When you meet somebody and you want to introduce yourself, certainly you can, and you will do it by verbally explaining to them who you are. But then when you give them a card at the end with your name and your number and your emails, that's what an EPK is. And some people actually have this as a QR code printed on their business card. So think about perhaps producing, if you're still using physical cards, which I'm still using it. A lot of people also moved on to electronic cards, meaning that they just, they tap their phones, for instance, or they just scan something on their phone. They don't even give them anything physical. Their phone is just good enough, and that's fine too. What they do is just basically scan the code, and then that takes them to a web page where you can see it. So EPKs can be a PDF document that you can email. EPKs can be a URL that you can insert into a barcode, and then when people scan it, they immediately go to the barcode. They immediately go to the URL. But it lives online. It used to be that these were printed and put into like dossiers, and you would send them out with like a press release and a CD and all of those. Obviously, we're past those days now. EPKs are very functional, and the reason why I said it's a business card is because it explains who you are. So you can really use this in order to advance your career. So there's different things that go into it. The first thing that really you want to start off is a bio. Like, who are you? First, you need to really explain to people where you're coming from, what your background is. It is important that this is short. In today's day and age, people just don't have the time to read, pages and pages of narratives and text. You want to avoid that. You want to really get to the point really fast, make it concise, make it short, and make it relevant. That's really important. A lot of times when I read press releases and bios, there's a lot of information that can be really edited out. And one of the good things about generative AI is to be the ability to actually make things more concise, and for your text to be formulated differently and shorter, and you can give all sorts of different prompts in order to, once you've written a bio, for that to be edited. Grammarly is another great resource that a lot of artists should be using to make things really impactful. I recommend that 2 paragraphs or one long paragraph is a great start. It doesn't have to include all of the information about your background. It needs to include the most relevant information of your background. And as you move up the food chain, you can consider adding more paragraphs and making it longer and switching things up. But it is important that there's some basic information. Where are you from? How did you start making music? What have you done up until now? Have you worked with anybody, collaborators, producers? Do you have any recordings? Any important facts from anything that you put up online? Even though you might be applying to a music venue to perform, you should still include a lot of information about your recordings and the songwriting you've done. And in fact, EPKs are not just for live music. EPKs are used across the board. As I mentioned before, this could be given to a social media manager, to a press person, as well as a manager. So EPKs are across the board. It's not just for live. But then we'll take information from the EPK and then turn that into a pitch email. Some EPKs also have an artist statement. This is sort of like a manifesto, if you will. Depending on the style of music you do, it's more important that you explain your mission with your music, what you're trying to accomplish. I see a lot of composers actually use that. Excuse me. A lot of people who are in different kind of like styles of music, from jazz to classical to new music, tend to have a larger view on the arts and their music and what it means and why they're doing things the way they're doing things. So for them, their bio is a mix of what they've done, but then also what they would like to do and what their music really means. So you can use this portion for different reasons, but the point here is that you're trying to introduce yourself to somebody who doesn't know you. So that would be sort of like the first thing that you should really see in an EPK. The second thing that I would like to emphasize here is that if you have any press quotes, that you include them. Obviously, it's called a press kit for a reason. That said, again, this doesn't have to be world famous publications just yet. It could be a blog. It could be a producer saying something about you. It could be somebody who has weight in the music industry commenting on your abilities as something that people can reference. And I'd like to think of this portion as quotes that are relevant to your career, that will advance your career. Again, the fact that you're not in a major publication doesn't mean that you should not include it here. The other thing is that this should be short. At this point, I would recommend maybe 1 to maybe 3 press quotes or quotes, period. If you start getting, quotes from, bigger places, then you can add more and you can swap things out. But the idea here is that it supports your short bio, your artist statement. The quotes here is something, because it's given by a third party, right? It's not what you think, it's what somebody else thinks. So here you bring a third party to the table. The first one is your perspective, POV, and the second is somebody else's perspective, POV. So here you get sort of like a dual perspective on your artistic career. Pictures are always important. We live in a very visual society. We live also in a very fast-paced society, meaning that people don't have as much time to read blocks of text, which means that you need to spice up your EPK with pictures and visuals. And the first visual that comes to mind, obviously, aside perhaps if you have a logo or a typeface for the artist name or your group, is your picture. So if you're in a band, then I definitely recommend that you have a group picture there, because that's what you are presenting. If you're an individual, that's more like a singer-songwriter, then certainly an individual photo is the way to do it. Sometimes I've seen people add a couple pictures, which is great, not just one picture, but a couple. And in fact, on the right-hand side, you can actually see an example sort of like of what a media kit might look like. As you can see, the first thing you see is really after the word media kit is the picture, not even the name of the performer or the artist. You see 2 pictures, and then you see a block of text underneath. That would be the bio. And for media kits, I do recommend Canva, which is, again, a fantastic resource. There are several websites like Canva where you can create EPKs, and in the search box, just put EPK or media kit or a portfolio or things of that nature. So that should really give you some templates to work with. As far as pictures are concerned, I do not recommend at this stage to have high resolution pictures in your EPK. I recommend that these are low resolution, but at least that gives you an ability, the visibility, and to be able to clearly see who you are if you zoom in, for instance, or if you just look at the picture without even zooming in. If a press publication that's printed is interested in printing or running a picture of you, they will certainly not get it from the EPK only. They will probably contact you, and you'll probably have another conversation before you can get there. And if you need to upload high resolution pictures, and let's say your EPK lives on a website, you can certainly add another page to your EPK and say high resolution pictures here. Always easy. But I think it's important at this stage you're really introducing yourself. That's why you don't need 5-page bios, and that's why you don't need high resolution pictures just yet. Those things are relevant and important, but they have their time. So at this stage, when you're just sending it out as a PDF, you don't want to make it too heavy. And as a result, I recommend that you just put a couple pictures there that are good looking, that are polished, if you will, that are perhaps taken by a professional photographer, or that are edited, that give you a good sort of like understanding of who you are. Pictures can tell a whole stories without even like one word in it. So it's important that you work on this. The other thing that I recommend is also perhaps using a live shot from a performance as opposed to just studio shots, because this way somebody who is interested in working with you can see what you look like on stage and can even look at the formation of the group. Video links are super important because you want to see what the band looks like, what the performer looks like in action. Pictures are stationary, obviously, and they tell a picture, but videos can tell even a larger picture, or a story rather. And the videos can be anything from a lyric video to an official video that's like scripted with characters and acting and actors and whatnot. It could be a live performance, as long as the sound is good. That's usually a problem with live performances. It could be like a 5-minute teaser, a 3-minute teaser of something, like a show coming up, or like a recording that you're working on. Maybe some shots from the recording studio. Maybe just a couple of minutes from your own life explaining where you're coming from as a singer-songwriter, as a performer. Not having music in your videos wouldn't necessarily make sense at this stage. So I do recommend that you add video there, but it could really be anything. It could also be what we call a sizzle video, which is basically something like an EPK, but all crunched into a video. Performances, recordings, who you are, sort of like a short bio, if you will. A sizzle reel is something that I've also seen performers use instead of an electronic press kit. But I do still recommend EPKs because they're easier to produce. The other ones is actually a video that somebody needs to produce, and that takes up a lot of time. But an EPK is something that you can change really fast. Once you do a sizzle video, then you're kind of like stuck with it until you do your next one, and that might take some time. So video is really important. YouTube obviously is the go-to platform, but if you have links to videos that you are hosting on your website, that's totally fine. If you're using other streaming sites, totally fine as well. Streaming links, which kind of like goes hand in hand with video links. Streaming links obviously is for audio only, and the first thing that comes to mind is Spotify, since so many people are using it. But if you have an Apple account, Amazon, those are totally fine too. I will say that, at this stage, so many people are using Spotify in the industry that is like quite easy just to include the link there and for people to click on it and boom, there it is. That said, I would recommend that you also use an independent streaming link as well, something like a Bandcamp or a SoundCloud. The reason for that is with Spotify, not only do you need to have an account, and yes, a lot of people have accounts nowadays, but you may not have all of your recordings on Spotify. Those are obviously filtered through distributors. With Bandcamp and SoundCloud, you are really in charge of what you're uploading. So you can use this opportunity to really upload a demo or a different take or a remix or something that you don't really want to upload to Spotify just yet. You're still working on it, but you'd like to test it and you'd like to have it online somewhere. And that's why Bandcamp is relevant in my opinion. And also, obviously, for your future income, Bandcamp pays out more since those are MP3 downloads, as well as a host of other things, as opposed to Spotify. So to have your music in different streaming platforms is a great idea, but not just the big ones and the sort of like companies out there, but also the smaller ones and the more independent ones as well. And every country has different streaming platforms and their preference and all of that. But as far as the US is concerned, those two would be the go-to places that I would recommend. Same thing with social media, and obviously this speaks for itself. With social media, you're really trying to cast a really wide net onto the digital world. We all know that by now, Facebook tends to skew older and larger. Instagram, a lot of young folks are using it, as well as people who are from around the world. TikTok has become a big phenomenon. I'm not really going into a social media sort of like campaign here, but suffice to say that if you're putting together an EPK, those are really some of the things that you could just not include. You have to include those. But my recommendation here is that you only include those that you feel confident in. Don't include 7, 8, 10 different social media handles because you have a presence on all of them, because you don't really want to show others that you have 10 followers on TikTok. Just focus on Instagram if you have 1,000 there, for instance, or 5,000. You need to start somewhere, and I would focus on a couple of these and really just go after them if you're putting together an EPK. Social media handles are important for people like myself who are booking acts day in, day out. Obviously, we look at stats, we look at numbers, but more importantly, we really want to have an understanding of how the performer and the artist is building an audience. And it's not the only thing we look at, and that's the beauty of actually EPKs, because they give you a bunch of things to look at, right? You're not just saying, here, I have 20,000 views on this video, and therefore, you should book me because I'll bring a lot of people to the table. No, you're trying to paint a larger picture here with the EPKs, and social media stats and handles are just one of them. They are important. It's not the only thing that we're looking at, though. That's really important to understand. There are many reasons why bookings happen, and there are many reasons why people come to different shows, and social media is not the only one of them. It certainly is important. It's part of the puzzle, but it's not the only one. Which brings us to the next bullet point, numbers and stats. Again, we are looking at followers, we are looking at views. MP3 sales or streams, all of those are really important, yes, but it's not the only thing we're looking at. In fact, if you look at the live music space, we tend to look at more of ticket sales as opposed to the other ones. Ticket sales are basically a reflection of how hot you are in that marketplace. And this could be, excuse me, this could be as recent as a couple months before, or it could be a couple of years. So to have ticket sales data and to be able to share that with the other side is really important as an artist. You should really keep track of all your ticket sales as you move up in your career. You should indicate how much tickets were, what the venue was, what the capacity was, how many tickets were sold in advance versus how many tickets were sold at the door. Those are really important things. I would even include this as far as like information there that's relevant. For instance, there was a big debate that night and therefore turnout was lower. There was like too many shows that night at nearby venues with the same style of music, and as a result, the turnout was low. It was raining that day. It was snowing that day. Anything that helps you remember why the number was the way it was, so that you can explain yourself to somebody who's in this business, and they're looking at ticket sales in order to gauge whether a performer is fit for a music venue, not just from the perspective of the music and the style and the genre. So ticket sales are really important for live music and venues. If you are a record label and you're looking at this EPK and trying to get a sense of it, ticket sales are still important because they want to see, do you have an audience? Do you have a live audience? Do you have somebody that's sort of like baked into a community? Again, followers are important for that, but also engagement. It's one thing to have 20,000 followers, but it's another thing to post something and have like dozens and dozens of people comment on it and hundreds of people like it, or put other kind of like emoticons. So engagement, very important. followers, important. Ticket sales, important. All of this is really important. How frequently you post is important. Again, this session is about EPKs and pitch emails, not necessarily social media campaigns. But if you go deeper into digital world and your identity as an artist living in the digital world or having presence in the digital space, those things become really important. And then lastly, the media kit or the EPK should certainly end with contact info. You'd be surprised how many people go, at lengths to finish off an EPK and really don't include their emails or their contact info at the end. That's quite surprising to me sometimes. Because you never know how people might access your EPK. Some people might just like post it online and you download it somewhere and you need to contact the person. Somebody just emails you, forwards you an email, from somewhere else. And again, that your email might not be on that email. So contact info is really important. Some people are great on DM on social media. Some people are not. Some people check their social media handle every day. Some people check it once every few weeks, which means that you don't want to waste an opportunity. So including your email, including your cell phone in certain cases are really important. Whatever method you prefer to be contacted, that's what you should have in your contact info. I also recommend that if you have a team that you're working with, that you include their info on that contact sheet as well. This shows that you have people behind you. This might be a social media person, it might be a publicist, it might be a record label, it might be a booking agent, it might be a manager. Whoever is working with you, it's really good to have their info online as well, at least on the EPK as well. So team members show that you have that you approaching this as a team, not just as an individual that's doing everything by himself or by herself. So I hope that this gave you a better perspective on what an EPK looks like. I would like to actually use some of this information now to show you how you can craft an impactful pitch email to go along with the EPK. So both are really needed. EPKs, again, can be used for a larger purpose, whereas the pitch email is more specific to getting live shows. You can certainly craft a pitch email based on whether you'd like somebody to check out your music. So you can certainly write a pitch email to a record label, nothing wrong with that. And again, you'll use some information from the EPK here. But today what we're going to look at is actually a pitch email. So I've formatted here, I typed up sort of like an imaginary, put on a different kind of hat and presenting myself as the manager or the agent of a performer, and I'm pitching this to a music venue. So my role now, as we go along this here, for instance, would be to pitch to a music venue. So how do you construct an email that will be impactful? Well, the first thing that I would recommend is really that you address the person. So many times venues get emails that's just kind of like a mass email. It's like, hey, book us and here's information about us. And that's not really, doesn't send out the right kind of vibe. For me, it's really important to address the music booker, the venue, or if you know the person, then certainly use their name. And if not, then just use booking manager. But make it kind of like, more like a letter. Dear booking manager, I wanted to inquire about booking my band. They're called, the American Wonders, and I'd like to get them booked at Drom, for instance. That's sort of like a very short introduction and already sets the tone. And if you know the name of the person, even better. So you want to start off by introducing kind of like yourself. But even before you do that, if you've been to that venue or if you've been to any show of that promoter, it's really great to be able to say that, because that just sets you apart from so many other emails that are being sent to the same venue or to the same promoter. To say something like, I've been to shows at your venue. I've attended events that you promoted over the past. My favorite show of the last year was a show that you produced or you promoted or that you put on. I like the vibe of the venue. All of those things are really great because they show that A, you're interested in a different way, not just to pitch your band, but also that you understand what the other side is coming from. Oh, I understand the kind of venues that you are working with. I understand the kind of vibe you're trying to put together. Your venues are in the business, just like the artists are in the business of bringing together communities. and they have an identity, just like an artist has an identity. And the fact that you understand that you appreciate that is huge and will really set you apart from so many other bookings. So off the bat, right there, you're telling people, I know who you are, I've been to your venue, and now I would like to present a band that will fit into that venue, into your identity. So that's usually a great start. So does that mean that you have to go to all these different venues before you apply them? Of course not. You don't live in the same city in certain cases. In certain cases, you just found them online. You had 2 minutes to look at it. But there's something to be said about doing your homework and doing deeper research and a deeper dive into what's this venue about? What kind of other acts have they promoted? What's their capacity? Are there certain acts that they will not promote, not book? What do other people say about the venue themselves? Just like artists, a lot of people have a lot of comments about venues and promoters and the kind of shows that they do. So to really understand that and to show to the other side that, hey, I understand that you're standing for something, I can help you with that. We have a match. There's an overlap here in what you believe and what I believe. So right after that, you start following with more factual things. For instance, giving an idea of how big the band is. In this case, guitar, vocals, bass, and drums. You also let them know that you performed at venues around town. And that's really important. If you're pitching to a venue in, let's say, Los Angeles, and you're only using reference from venues in Chicago and New York and Miami, it's not really important to the venue in LA, because you need to really give them an idea of the venues in LA, right? So in this case, I'm pitching to a venue in New York, and therefore I'm using other venues, as you have seen here. And not only that, you also indicate the sort of like neighborhood, Lower East Side, East Village, downtown Manhattan. Those are sort of like some of the places where you performed at. In the last 12 months, that's really important, not since 1999, right? You don't want to tell them, all the different venues you worked at for the last 25 years. What's more relevant? Where are you now? That's really important. One thing about live music is that we really care about, what's happening recently. What has happened before is great, but trends change really fast. So if you're going to look at it from the perspective of, well, what's the draw of this performer? How many people are going to come to this show? You want to look at more recent stuff, more relevant stuff. And last 12 months, last 18 months, that's actually a good indicator from my perspective. Right after you include, and that's sort of like the point here, is that you really want to make it relevant and urgent. Right after that, we include some links. That's really important because, if you're going to pitch to a music venue, you really need to know, the other person really needs to know what you look like, what you sound like, maybe some engagement with the audience from the stage, obviously a good song that you pick, and 2 links is good. You don't want to have like, 5 links, 10 links either. If the person is interested, they can certainly look you up and find more find more videos. But for this gig, you want to keep it to 1 or 2 links, and make sure to put your best foot forward. Make sure that those videos are edited, they sound good, they look good. They're just not somebody that a fan captured while sipping on their beer, and it's viewed by 5 people. You really want to make it effective. Then you explain to them what this event is about. In this case, it's celebrating the release of a new single, a new album, a special guest, my birthday. There's so many reasons why people do events, right? And if you can tag along to something else that's happening, or if you can double up the reason why people should come to a show, the better. I say this because a lot of live music booking depends on draw. So in this case, for instance, I included that the band expects 40 to 50 people. It's not a lot if you're pitching to a venue that's 300, like us, for instance, but it's a start. And maybe now's the time. But I'm happy that you're telling me about, how many you can bring, and you're honest about it. And maybe I'd like to have you as an opening band. Maybe I'd like to book you next time, not this time. But, once you start the conversation, you should continue developing that conversation. A pitch email is not just a one-time thing. You're really starting a conversation. You're really building a relationship. That's what you're really doing. So pitch emails are so much more than just pitching your show and doing a one-off. It's a conversation. It's a relationship. And as a result, you should be very honest about your draw and not exaggerate how many people you can bring. That said, sometimes I've seen people saying that, hey, I can only do 40, but if you allow me some time, I can put together a bill and we'll have 3 bands on the bill and each brings 40, and that's 120 right there for you. So now we're talking about something that's more along the lines of what I might be interested in as a venue that holds 300 Or, I might say, okay, I'll just wait out, or I'll come to your show, namely the next time you're performing, and I'll come to your show, check you out, and then we can talk about another show afterwards. So again, you're starting a relationship. It's not just a, pitch email. Sometimes I get asked by artists, hey, can I negotiate with two venues at the same time? Of course, you should be. Not just, are you allowed to? You should be negotiating with five venues at the same time for the same event, because not all of them will get back to you, number one. Number two, not all of them will give you the same deal, even if they accept that you would like to work with them. And number three, there is no obligation on your end to confirm all five shows at the same time. In fact, you should probably not, because you only have so much bandwidth to do one show and promote it and market it and bring people. But there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I've chose such and such venue to work with this time, but I would like to come to your venue next time. And by the way, I would like to invite you to that other show that I've just booked. Come check me out. Venues will not be able to book the same acts over and over again. The band will not be able to just play the same venue over and over again. Everybody, every venue and every artist needs, diversity and versatility, and doing different things at different times. So if you understand, just like the venue understands, that this is not a one-time thing, then you can really build this, and over time, hopefully, it will be a long-term relationship. To indicate how many hours you need on stage is important. So in this case, I just added 2.5 hours, but usually 60 minutes to 70 minutes is good for one act. And then, of course, you want to indicate what time of the day, because some venues will do shows on the early side from 6:30 on. Some others will do a little later show after 9 p.m., for instance, because their audience comes out late. And then some others, they're just interested in a late night party after 11, and some live shows fall into that as well. So you have 3 different slots. Actually, on Saturdays and Sundays, we do afternoon shows, kids shows, and other different fundraisers, which means that now you're getting a 4th slot in the afternoon, and then maybe there's a brunch time on the Sunday. Now you've added a 5th slot. So there's so many different time slots that venues book and promoters book, and as a result, you should indicate in your pitch email what slot are you interested in. It doesn't mean that you will get it, but certainly it's good for the other side to know that. Obviously, you need to indicate the date when you'd like to do this. Usually for clubs, 6 weeks to 2 months is a good time frame. So right now we are doing this on August 19, which means that if there's a show happening in October, it's a good time to talk about this. It's probably too late to do a show in August. Anyway, you will not have enough time to do marketing. September might be an opportunity, but it's short time. Maybe there are some cancellations. Maybe you have an urgency to do a show. But I would certainly think about October, November timeframe. Is it too early to do shows, to talk about shows in 2026, for instance? On my end, a little bit, because we're still 4 months out until the end of the year, until the new year, rather. But sometimes, if you have a big event and a big guest is coming and they're exclusive to you, and you really need to nail this down for visa purposes or for other purposes, then yeah, certainly you can discuss. But really, for venues, 6 weeks to 2 months, 2.5 months, that sort of like time frame is important. And it's important whether you prefer a weekday or a weekend. Obviously, there's more competition on Friday night, Saturday night, for obvious reasons. To indicate what kind of ticket charge you'd like to have at the door in advance is important from your perspective. The venue might always say, oh, that's too little, let's increase that. Or that's too expensive for us, let's decrease it. Those are all negotiations. What you're doing with that pitch email is, again, showing that you are interested in a performance, and then expecting the other side to hopefully be interested, and then start a negotiation and start conversing. And during that time, you can talk about the deal, you can talk about the ticket price, you can talk about the time of the show, you can talk about the date, the day of the week, you can talk about all of these things. But at least this email gives the venue and the promoter an understanding of like what you are interested in, how you see things kind of formulate. Social media links, super important, obviously. Those are right there. I have 4 of them because this band is able to have presence on all 4 of them. And then you kind of like, finish off the email by saying that, playing at the venue was always a dream of ours. That again adds an urgency to it. Remember the first section where we talked about, oh, I'm a patron of your venue already. I know what you guys look like. I know what you present. I'm a member of your community. Now you're finishing off by saying, as a valuable member of your community, now I'd like to contribute to what you guys are presenting. And and hence my email. Now, you don't have to finish off like that. Again, a lot of times you may not have been to any venue, to that venue that you're pitching to, but you can certainly say, I respect what you stand for. I would like to be part of your community, even though you haven't been there before, even though you're not as tight with them as some others might be. So anyhow, you finish off the email, you include your email address, and you include your phone number, and that's how a pitch email looks like. So today's conversation, we covered how to put together EPKs. We covered how pitch emails are formatted. And if you actually look at this and then compare it to the previous slide, you will see things such as a little information about the band. That's your short bio. Links to videos, links to social media, stats and numbers. For instance, what the draw is, how many hours on stage you will be, what time slot you'll be working on, you'd like to perform at. Ticket sales, or draw rather. So these are all things that you've used already for your research, for your EPK. Now you're taking information from that and putting into a pitch email. For music booking, you can do the same for a record label or any other pitches that you're doing. So EPKs are really useful. They're sort of like a resource for many things you might be doing down the line, including pitching emails. As far as I'm concerned, I have a rule that I came up with. It's called the R&R rule. It's like a symbiosis, really, and that is between the relationships and the reputation. Some people call this the 2 C's, as in connections and credibility, but it's more or less the same thing, because what you're doing with an EPK is putting together who you are, a portfolio, a business card, and then sending it to somebody and hope that that person will view that and then start a relationship with you. This might be over email, it might be over phone, it might be in person, it might be a long-term relationship. But that relationship that you have between the two of you feeds into your reputation, meaning as somebody who's professional, somebody who knows what they're doing. And that reputation will come back to you because the person you've just contacted, let's say, will recommend you to other people and will talk about you. And the EPK that you did will lead to a booking, and that will mean that new relationships will be formed with your fans and with other professionals in the industry. Meaning that the more reputable you become, the more relationships you'll have with, again, people in the industry, but also with your fans. So these two things feed off of each other. And I found that, the more honest you can be with your relationships, the more professional you can be with your relationships, the more understanding you can be of the other side with your relationships, that will feed you into the person you are. And I'm not saying this as far as just like the person on the marquee, right? I'm saying this as a person who's working in this industry, as a professional, as an artist, as a creative person, as a community member. And that reputation feeds into more relationships. So hopefully this short conversation, this short presentation gave you an idea as to how things are formulated. I did write an ebook that I would like to share with you if you want to take out your phones and you can scan this barcode. Perhaps we can also include this in the information underneath this video as well. It's called Make It Live, the Handbook for Getting Gigs. It's a short ebook that I wrote about booking live shows. And this gives you a little more perspective, aside from the EPK, on what a booking agent does, what a promoter does, what is a talent buyer, how do music venues work, what type of music venues exist. So it's all for you to enjoy, free of charge. And if you'd like to contact me, here's my contact information, phone number and email included. If you ever find yourself in New York and you want to check out a venue, please stop by our venue. We are in the downtown section of Manhattan, on the east side, in the East Village. And I hope to see you very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening to me today. Take care.